and gentlemen, as always, I'm your host, AirsoftAL, and welcome to the first review for 2023. And this one comes from, of course, another offshoot of Fiachi. It's a Ritus. Ritus? Ritus? Either way, basically it's Fiachi. That's literally what it is. It's Fiachi, or it's some other company itself. It's one of those things, ladies and gentlemen. So, what is it exactly I've been asked to review this time from our friends over in communist China? Well, it's a laser.
Fucking laser sights.
To be exact, it looks like something out of Call of Duty. The laser in question is the G55, not the G35, which would be the green laser. No, instead I have the $51 variant, which, that's a thing. On the Amazon webpage, which you can find down there in the pinned comment down below, this thing, the red laser, of course, goes for $50.99, i.e. $51 tax, or depending on what tax you have and what tax they give you. For the green laser, it is $60, or, again, depending on the tax. Again, it goes for $58.99. So, you know, depending on the tax, ladies and gentlemen, because taxes are a thing. So, let's go ahead, open up the box, and see what all comes into it. As you can see inside the box, now displayed, you got the laser, you have the strap that's to help with the cable management, you got the new pressure switch, which I'm actually a lot more happy with this than what you get from other Fiachi products, because this one's a little bit more small, a little bit more responsive, nice pressure plate there, a little shorter at least, in terms of the cable length, and of course you got the M-lock lugs right here, so you can remove this from the Picatinny housing you have right here, to have for M-lock, which I will be doing. You have the mount right here for the laser. Again, charger, what have you, and of course a nice little bit of a Allen screw wrench right here. The laser itself is pretty hefty. Let's go talk about how hefty this thing is, as well as the features that's on this bad boy. Now that we got the thing out of the box, let's actually take a look at this laser itself, which, I'll be honest, is kind of a chunky boy. It is pretty chunky, especially when compared to the Fiachi flashlight. This thing is a pretty chunky boy. And I'm not joking on it, this thing is pretty chunky. So, yeah, while the buttons are a bit different, this one's a more round instead of the protected surface of the button, which, one of those things, unlike that, which, yes, the laser is a laser, by the way. The laser itself actually has, of course, a little bit of things stated in the actual press release it has. I mean, just look at this, look at what they're claiming here. Waterproofing and all this other stuff. Who cares? What you're more interested in is what the hell are these two knobs for? Well, these two knobs right here are, of course, for windage and elevation. So, basically like a front sight, more or less. Now, the big question, of course, everyone has is, why would I need this? Well, you can have this for, of course, your Call of Duty cosplay, because, again, this kind of looks like a laser designator, or you can have this for a retro build. But we're going to get to that in a second. What I'm going to talk about, of course, is the other element for this, is having it for your pistols.
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
Okay, I know a lot of you are already kind of questioning my sanity by this point. Hear me out. While you would not use the switch that the thing comes with, we'll get to that in a second, I would say that the button itself is good for pistols. So let's take a ADD break here and go check out this thing in action on pistols, shall we? Alright, so the handguns I've picked for the pistol portion of this video is, of course, a Hater revolver. This is a gas gun, of course. It is a... Essentially, we're going to be using the double action on this, not the single action, just to kind of see how much deviation or drop from zero we're going to get. The other one, of course, is a non-blowback. This is the BR45. This one we're going to be, again, seeing how it does for a non-blowback gun. This is essentially a double action only pistol, and we're going to see how that holds up. For our gas blowback portion of this, we have, of course, the 1911, the venerable 1911, seeing how the gas blowback portion of this works out. Again, we're just going to see how that works out. And then finally, for the Springer portion, we have, of course, the SIG MPX pistol. Technically speaking, this is a pistol under ATF regulations, so blame the ATF. And this is the only Springer pistol I got, technically, that has Picatinny rails. So, again, blame the ATF. Now, the round count we're going to be using for this test is 6 for the revolver, 8 for the BR-45, because technically speaking, it's supposed to be replicating a 45 caliber gun, so 8 rounds of 45 ACP, 8 rounds in the 1911, and then finally 6 out of the other one, because I don't think you want me doing a full fucking magazine out of the goddamn thing, because that thing holds literally 30 BBs, and I don't want to keep doing 30 goddamn BBs, so we're just going to do 6 goddamn rounds. Now, the reason for this test is, again, seeing if this thing will hold 0 on a variety of handguns, and kind of see the patterns we get out of it. Now, I will be using the same paper target throughout the entire thing, but we're definitely going to see a little bit more out of it as we go along. So again, we're going to kind of go with pistol distance of about 30 feet or so, or at least 20 feet or so, what you would be allowed in an actual match, in an indoor CQB match. So let's say you have your laser. It's going to be easy to click on, and we're going to see exactly what we get in terms of a pattern from each one, and whether or not they actually do land on the paper where the laser is. So, yeah, this should be interesting. I'm not gonna lie. That's definitely a pretty tight grouping, honestly. It's not bad for the Hater revolver, and granted, my shaky as hell hand, but again, that's actually not bad for the laser sight, and I wasn't using irons at all at 20 feet, so that's actually a pretty good sign for this laser. Let's mark this as the Hater grouping, and then we'll move on to the next pistol. Okay, so the laser was here, but, yeah, the Springer was kind of all over the goddamn place, so, yeah, take these results with a grain of salt. But let's move on to the non-blowback pistol now, and see if that works really well with this or not. Once again, I'm actually pleasantly surprised by the groupings. I mean, yes, the laser was definitely off-centered by where it was supposed to be, but so far we're not seeing any deviations, actually, from the lasers, like, where the laser points to where the shots are landing, so that's actually pretty good. But now let's get to the gas blowback and see exactly what we're getting in terms of those results, and whether or not we may lose 0. The one thing that definitely surprised me about this laser is the fact of just the groupings. This one right here is the 45 that you saw in the last test, and that is pretty decent for the laser. Now, I know many of you are asking, well, now, wait a minute, if you're saying that's good, even though in actual real steel that would be bad, because you were pointing the laser at something and the shot didn't line up on the laser, why are you saying that's a good thing? Well, here's the thing about Airsoft. Airsoft, we're using 6mm projectile BBs that are going anywhere between 330, or even lower, to 500 FPS. Now, the big thing about it is that when it comes to handguns, and especially in a CQB environment where we cannot automatically line up our sights, having a laser that automatically shines on the target, like that behind me, and especially a target that's essentially the size of a torso, well, you can see the results for yourself, and the results don't lie. All these are torso shots, tight torso shots, might I add, and that's legitimately a really good thing. And again, it definitely gives credence to the laser for a airsoft, Nerf, or paintball, or even jail ball edition. Now, you heard me talk earlier about it being a retro build, or at least adding to a retro build. Do you really want me to talk about it? I mean, I can go over more about the laser, especially the parts compatibility with other Fiachi. I mean, I could do that if you...
Do it!
Okay. Okay.
Just
Okay.
do it!
Let's get to the retro style of this thing, shall we? What I mean by retro build is that if you throw this thing on a standard AR-15 style, or a CAR-15, or even a Colt style Armalite rifle, well, I shall say this joke. Hey bro, I heard you like retro. Yeah, essentially this thing will turn your basic M4 into something out of 1990s or even the 1980s, where the early years of attachments became a thing, where the early years of aimpoint became a thing, where the early years of EOTech became a thing, the early years of basically everything we have nowadays improved. But that doesn't say that that's a bad thing, especially if you are like me and you got the tough angle sight rails, which a video will be coming out on that in the near future. But if you have it on the right side, which of course many did back in the day, ironically enough, then you could basically have it to where you can quickly turn on and acquire a target. So in a sense, that if you throw this on your 1911 rail on your high kappa, which has the long slide, which I know a lot of you would probably go for the long slide, then you basically have the dollar store equivalent of the Terminator 1911, where it's like, Mom, can we have the Terminator 1911? No, son, we have Terminator 1911 at home. Terminator 1911 at home is basically this over the top of the slide of your high kappa or your standard 1911, because again, you decide to install that rail system. Now, the thing is, this does not actually... Okay, it does add a little weight on there, because again, this is a chunky boy. But this does give you much more access to adjust the laser to line up with the actual iron sight of your rifle, be it a Colt-style M4 or even full-size M16. Again, that's if you decide to go with this and not an actual rail system. However, for that retro look and the retro points, I would recommend you go with this style. But again, it's not that hard to activate and quickly deactivate, because again, if you're in a CQB environment, then you can basically turn this sucker on, leave it on, and continue to basically engage your targets, and not have to worry about some dude with nods having to spot you in a dark environment. Again, it's not that hard to do. Now, earlier I did talk about the fact this thing had a switch system, and you saw earlier that this thing did have a switch system. So let's talk about that switch system and kind of go over why it's a better improvement over the Fiachi switches, shall we? The laser's light switch, or at least switch in general, is a lot more modern. It's a lot more compact. It's definitely something you would see in the more modern setting of shooters, unlike the Fiachi one, which is, well, a bit of a long boy. And I mean that, it is a bit of a long boy. It's a thin boy, too, unlike this one, which is built into it and has a better body. Again, when compared to the two, this one is a lot more superior than the other. Now, the good thing is that this is a M-LOK compatible one and has a base for Picatinny, unlike this one where you have to open up the M-LOK switch plate, fight the sucker in there, get the M-LOK switch plate back together, and that way you have that. So and again, because this one's shorter, this doesn't take up as much rail space if you, say, have an SPR, unlike this one, which takes up a lot of rail space, and again, if you have an SPR build, then you're not going to have a lot to work with. This one, however, you are going to have a lot to work with because it's not that long. Now, of course, you are going to have it in this. This is the Picatinny rail configuration. It is rubberized, it is able to be flexible, and you can basically put this on any Picatinny system you want. Personally, though, I'm going to leave it like this so I can basically get that retro feel and look, so I can either just bolt it directly into the handguard or have a piece of high-speed tape or whatever else literally holding this in place. That and the actual button itself is not that bad. Even this, has a very nice audible click and is very satisfying. While not as big as, say, the Fianchy light switch, it is definitely there and is reassuring. Again, this is very nice, very good, and I am happy with it, and I will be using this for all others. Now, getting to that part about compatibility, this is compatible with all Fianchy and other Chinese tactical lights and everything else in between, because essentially it's made by the same company, just a different name. So again, completely different, basically different company name, same factory type deal. So yeah, but I will definitely be using this, and I will probably get more of these in the future. Again, depending. So you heard about that, you've seen this thing work with pistols. What about rifles? Or at least in this case, what about SMGs? Well, let's set up the target, set up the camera, and get your mandatory ADD break, and see how this thing works with, of course, a rifle, and see how it, of course, engages at 30 feet. Because you'll be using it to more or less quickly engage your target and lay rounds down range because you've been startled, panicked, or otherwise, and you don't have time to engage your irons or engage your optic of choice. So, let's do that, shall we? Once again, the results speak for themselves. Not a bad grouping, especially for it being center mass. Again, the paper represents center mass, and the fact that the laser was able to hold on as much as it did, and I did not lose zero, that's pretty good in my opinion. The reason I say that is because, once again, the situation scenario I had set up for it was that this was a CQB situation, or CQC, where essentially I am not using iron sights or optic, I am simply using the, well, again, the laser as a means to quickly identify the target, send rounds down range, and then immediately, do that. And I am happy to say that the laser actually did do that fairly well for an airsoft, Nerf, gel ball blast, or even paintball. And that's exactly what this is good for. Those situations. Real steel, on the other hand, I leave to the real steel enthusiast to say whether or not this is a good laser or a crappy laser. For airsoft, however, I will happily say this is actually a good laser, and one I am pleasantly surprised by. Now, I might take this to a night game that's coming up in March. Stay tuned for that video. But again, whether or not that it works in that night game is completely up to relevance. Now, in terms of a daylight thing, well, even in regular light, I still see the laser. In an actual daytime setting, I'm not gonna push it. I'm gonna save this for low light and, of course, darkness. But, again, just one of those things. So, is the G series of laser sights actually, or I'm just going to say this now, G series laser actually worth the money? Is it worth the asking price of $51 to almost $60 for either red or green laser? In my opinion, yes. Now, granted, you might be able to find it cheaper under the other brand names that, again, is coming from the same company. But the cross-compatibility between the two, or at least from a lot of the Chinese stuff, is, in my opinion, a good thing. And this is something good for airsoft and airsoft alone. Now, I'm not saying you should use this for real steel. I'm not saying you shouldn't use it for real steel. What I am saying, though, is that this laser is good for, say, anything in the airsoft, Nerf, paintball, or even gel ball sphere of influence. Even cosplayers can use this as a laser designator for your Call of Duty Ghost. Your Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Ghost cosplay and or loadout. It can even be used, if you want, as a simulated laser designator for simulated airstrikes or ordnance drops or anything of that nature, because of how closely it looks like to the actual in-game model. Of course, I leave that to you, my lovely, lovely viewers, and whether or not you want to buy this yourself, to test for yourself, have for yourself, or whatever, which is down there in the pinned comment down below, which down there as well is our, well, PayPal. And if you want to consider helping out the channel, because this channel is 100% viewer supported, Well, not 100%, but a good chunk of our budget does come from you, the viewers. And it's you, the viewers, who actually help make these things possible, so would you kindly consider donating to the PayPal down below? Every dollar, every amount you donate helps the channel in any way, shape, or form. Be it from better cameras, to more attachments, to more reviews, everything helps out. Or consider sponsoring a review. Again, you guys help out any way you can. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, I've been AirsoftAL, and I shall see you all in the next review. Till next time. Later.
Looking for that perfect game for your gaming console? Video Game Corner is the largest independently owned video gaming store in North Mississippi, located at 1519 Highway 72 in Corinth. We are an authorized limited-run retail store and have a massive collection of retro games and game systems, and also plush toys and collectibles. We also pay top dollar for your used video games. Check them out Monday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Visit Video Game Corner in Corinth.